what is this, December 17th. We are one day short of 8 months since this event took place at the Milwaukee County Courthouse. It's the trial of Judge Hannah Dugan based on events that occurred on April 18th of 2025 in the case of Eduardo Flores Ruiz. We are here. I'm here with Mary Stoker-Smith. We are still here with UWM's Mordecai Lee, and we have Ted Perry, who is out at the federal courthouse, who's been watching all of this testimony come in. I've really enjoyed Ted's whiteboard messages, has been giving us some quotes. I think more than anything, I've been enjoying Ted's lunch on the heater behind him. I don't know if they've got Ted ready to bring up. When he is, we'll have him ready. He may have some questions for Mordecai. He is okay. Ted is there. Let's go to Ted Perry now out at the U.S. courthouse. Ted, I hope lunch was tasty. It looked delicious. I hope the apple pie. Mary did say she's concerned that you had apple pie because you weren't supposed to be having sugar. But other than that, I think she told on you. So.
Yeah, don't worry about that, Mary. It's the holidays. I had two sandwiches. One I just gave to photojournalist Jake Salzburn, who said it was pretty good, pretty delicious, right? He's got a Subway sandwich, and he prefers mine. The apple pie is not quite ready, but we are getting there. Look at that. It doesn't look great, but it's warm and toasty.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Brian,
this is
you
live
want the
TV.
Brian, you wanted the whiteboard, Brian? Here you go.
I do. I can't read it because my screen is too small.
Yeah, I can't see that.
Oh, it says they could meet the ice people. Sounds like a line from a horror movie, right? It was actually testimony today from Joan Butts, the court reporter for Judge Hannah Dugan, who you hear often on these tapes on this discussion, this whispered discussion on where to send De La Rosa and her client, Eduardo Flores Ruiz. And at one point, the government lawyer said, "Why were you whispering?" And she goes, "Well, Judge Dugan was whispering." And she goes, "Is it possible you were whispering because you didn't want anyone to hear what you were up to?" And Butts admitted, perhaps, yes. It was an uncomfortable final witness for the government today. Joan Butts, the court reporter for Hannah Dugan, seemed both reluctant to be there and quite nervous on the stand, as her own words were played back to her a couple of different times after she claimed she didn't remember exactly what was said.
Ted, I think it's so interesting because this is another one of those examples of with a federal trial where we can't see and hear what's going on. I'm reading the words on my screen. Do you want me to show them? I'll do it. Okay, I'll get the heat. But that's not how it sounded. You heard it. Can you describe exchanges like that and how they sounded when you heard the recording?
Well, just like for the fifth time today, I think we heard that exchange back and forth. And as I was saying to myself, I wonder if they're ever going to ask why they were whispering. Sure enough, the government attorney said, "Why were you whispering there?" It's almost as if they knew what they were doing was not above board. That's the impression that the government wanted to give here, that you were whispering because you're up to something a little nefarious here.
So it's more like a,
Butts
do you want me to show them? No, I'll do it. I'll get the
Yeah.
I mean, is it more like that?
It really is. You kind of nailed it, yeah.
Because
You
I think
haven't
that
heard it, right?
that definitely.
Well,
It brings a different connotation as to what's going on. If you go, okay, maybe you can send her out that side.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very different from, hey, send her out that door over there.
yeah, no, it was definitely whispered, hushed tones, like, let's try to keep this between ourselves.
Yeah,
But
interesting.
it is very clear on the tape. It is very clear on the tape that we heard just before lunch break. You do hear Judge Hannah Dugan say, "Down the stairs," loudly, clearly. Her own clerk said that was the voice of Hannah Dugan. So the first time this comes up, it wasn't Joan Butts' idea. It was Judge Dugan's idea to suggest going down the stairs in an effort to evade ICE agents. As it turns out, they did not go down the stairs. They continued down the hallway a few more feet into the general public hallway where the ICE agents were waiting anyway. So I want to go back to something that was made on opening statements from the government as this case began this week. It doesn't matter that Eduardo Flores Ruiz didn't get away because he was captured a short time later as he made a run for it down 10th Street. It doesn't matter that he got away. What matters is the intent of the judge. And right now, the government has done a very good job of saying it was her intent. It was her intent to get that defendant and her attorney away from ICE agents.
It does seem a bit ironic, though.
I keep saying state, excuse me. The government has rested, and the defense will start in the morning. They said they have a few witnesses to call. And then they told the judge today, Judge Edelman, that they could get to closing arguments by tomorrow afternoon. So by this time tomorrow, this case could be in the hands of jurors.
I just think it's kind of ironic to think that if there's all this discussion, she's saying down the stairs, and then they're whispering, does she know which door to go out? Do you want me to show her? No, I'll do it. That in the end, the fact that she went out the wrong door helps Judge Dugan's case more than anything. Because if he had gone down the stairs and actually gotten away, you would have her being charged potentially with helping him to escape, not attempt to escape. They have to show that intent now.
You know, I think it's a pretty...
And the government took that to... Go ahead, Mordecai.
I think it's pretty common in American courtrooms that there develops a relationship between the presiding judge and the court reporter. They sort of become a team. And so the whispering is showing sort of the simpatico relationship they were having. And it sort of shows the chaos of what was going on at that split second. They were sort of conspiring to do something, but they were talking past each other. They didn't quite understand what they should do or how they should do it. So this is how it comes across in a courtroom as opposed to in real time.
And you mentioned Mordecai.
That's a great...
Yeah, go ahead, Ted.
I'm so sorry, Mary, to jump in here because I want to piggyback on what Mordecai was just saying, that there is sort of this camaraderie here. If you're the defense team, you hope that's not perceived by jurors, and here's why. We heard from Alan Freed earlier, who made it clear what his political leanings are when he admitted under oath today, he popped his head out into the hallway and saw an ICE agent, and what did you say to him? I called him a fascist. Now, just go back to just this within the last hour here, Joan Butts was, when told that ICE was in the courthouse, she was asked by the government attorney, what did you feel? And she said, I said that pisses me off. Excuse my French. But so you have two people in her courtroom who are clearly anti-ICE, clearly anti-ICE working in the Milwaukee County Courthouse. And so if you're Dugan's team, you don't necessarily want to be lumped in with those two, although they clearly are.
One other thing that stood out to me today that I think might have been overlooked as what seems to me to be an important piece of testimony in terms of what Hannah Dugan was trying to do by calling Eduardo Flores Ruiz's case sooner. And that is after dealing with that case, she says they're about to call Mr. Peel back with his other case. And she says, wait a minute, are there any other, should we take the other interpreter cases first? And then I think it was actually her clerk who says it, should we take the other interpreter cases first? And she says, is there anyone else who looks ... Looks what? What are they talking about, and what are they trying to do, and why would they want to take those interpreter cases first? Now, the argument could be, interpreters are hard to come by, they're hard to find, we've got one here, should we get those done right now? And if that's the case, that could be one argument, but certainly the other one.
That interpreter was not in the courtroom.
So that argument goes away.
Freed said he'd have to make...
So it leaves the impression that you were trying to rush through
call.
people who would be vulnerable to an ICE arrest. Right. That's certainly what the government is trying to portray, right?
And, you know, in the law...
Because he would have to...
Go ahead, Ted.
Wait, because he made the point, you know, if you did want an interpreter, sometimes it takes minutes, sometimes it takes more than an hour. So there was not an interpreter on standby in that courtroom at that moment.
You know, in the law, there's something called a hostile witness. In other words, one side can call somebody who's a reluctant witness and doesn't want to say what they know, but they're forced to. In this case, I think both of the last two witnesses, the way you've accurately described their testimony, were absolutely hostile witnesses. They just gulped having to say things that may well be the rock that changes the weight of the evidence.
And if people ask, why would a hostile witness cooperate? Well, you're subpoenaed. There's the force of law behind that. And then you are placed under oath. And if you lie, then, of course, you could face perjury charges. So they're there. They're answering questions as honestly as they can, but they don't necessarily want to be.
And that adds to their credibility.
And Alan Freed, who testified this morning, the court clerk, he, at least as an attorney, he is a former disabilities, people with disabilities attorney for them. He's now a clerk. So he knows how to choose his words. And at one point, corrected something, he said, no, I want to change that on the record, so he knew to do that. When Butts was speaking today, she does not have that same legal background. You could tell that she was saying things that she really didn't want to say, but she was answering the questions directed at her by the government. And you could get the sense that she said, oh boy, this is not helping Judge Dugan's case.